It is day 18, everybody. Welcome back into the 25 Drams of Christmas. I couldn't bring myself not to do another head-to-head. I just said yesterday I really want to start doing more of these head-to-heads. Look what we're doing, another head-to-head. Two great bottles from one of my favorite distilleries, Old Forester. We got the 1910 versus the 1920. Let's get it. 1910 starting off. Now both these bottles come out of their Whiskey Row series. So they've got 4 expressions in the Whiskey Row series. 1910 is actually the newest expression that they released. But what they do to this whiskey is really cool. So no age statement on either of these bottles. But the 1910 is actually a 100 proof Old Forester. So think, the Old Forester Black Label. And they put it in a new toasted, almost near barrel charred barrel. And they finish it in that barrel for an undisclosed amount of time. Usually 6 months to a year is what I have heard. According to the distillery, it's pretty much that second barrel that they're filling it in, it's charred almost to incineration. So think a lot more barrel char coming through, which is great for me. I love those notes. That's what the 1910 is all about. Mash bill's the same on both of these bottles. 18% rye and 72% corn, I think it is. That's not right. That might be right. I don't know. I'll put it on the screen if I get it right. So let's go into 1920 next. 1920 is the Old Forester Prohibition style. So this pays homage to the Prohibition times in bourbon and whiskey history. And one of just my favorite bottles overall with the 1920. A beautiful bottle. Now the 1910 comes in at 93 proof. The 1920 is amplified even more, up to 115. So that's great. That's great. We like our proof here. So let's start out with the 1910. We'll go into the 1920 next. First, let's do color next to each other. And looking at the bottles you can see on the table here, they're virtually identical. And the 1910's coming off a little bit darker in my light. Yep. Just a shade darker. I mean, just a shade darker on that 1910. Let's go into the nose on the 1910 first. Every time I go into this bottle, it is just caramel-coated green apples you would get at the fair, sprinkled with, with peanuts, with those caramel peanuts, and so much barrel char. I mean, so much delicious barrel char. Think like almost like a smoked caramel green apple. That's kind of how I would describe this. Yeah, that toast and that char comes through so much. It's a toasted chocolate. It's a burnt cocoa, is really what it is. Just a great nose. Initially, when I got this bottle, I was like, meh. It's very average, I don't know how I feel about this. 1920 blows it away. That's how I first thought, but 1910 has pulled super close to 1920 for me. So where you get that incredible barrel char and smokiness on the 1910, 1920 brings you back to, hey, this is classic bourbon. This is a classic bourbon profile versus something a little more out there with different notes in it. Phenomenal baking spices and brown sugar in this. Just enough alcohol burn on the nose where it gives you that all those wonderful notes, coming through. The classic note with Old Forester 1920, chocolate covered cherries. Chocolate covered cherries drizzled in just Nesquik chocolate milk powder. Man, oh man, that's so good. Alright, I'm gonna go into the 1910 first here. Cheers, everybody. Happy day 18, I believe we're on. Let's get into it. Man. The barrel char really does remind me of kind of like a Woodford Double Oak. Now, Woodford Double Oak actually comes out of the same parent company as Old Forester. So Old Forester is owned by Brown-Forman. Woodford Reserve is also owned by Brown-Forman. So theoretically, these could be very similar. For the Woodford Double Oaked, they do exactly that. So they aged in another, I believe it's just a toasted second new oak barrel, new charred oak barrel. Whereas the 1910, they're using, you know, that incinerated barrel, almost completely destroyed barrel is what they're using for that. But excellent chocolate note coming through on that. I would say even a banana. Almost like a creme brulee brown sugar. You know, that caramel drizzle, green apple banana. That's what it is. It's very, very desserty. Very desserty whiskey. Banana's a classic note I pick up in Old Forester almost every time. It's kind of the note that sticks out to me that makes me think it's either Old Forester or Jack Daniels usually, which is also another Brown-Forman product. I usually don't get as much banana on Woodford, but they still have a distinct note as well. All right, let's go to the 1920 here. The proof on the 1920 is really what does it for me for this whiskey. The 115 proof coming through. It adds excellent complexity to the palate. I mean, baking spices all over this. That cherry chocolate covered cherry I described. But you've had the chocolate covered cherries where you bite into them and you get that kind of mushy, creamy center. That's what it is. It's like that creamy center is what I get on the 1920. Versus something really smoky, barrel cherry, you know, rich, pungent, full flavors. This is more, hey, I'm a classic bourbon, and I'm gonna punch you in the face still. That proof, baby. Punch me in the face. I don't know if there's a better value at $60. Like a couple days ago, I had Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Such a good whiskey, but every time I have Old Forester 1920, I forget how good it really is until I go to it again. If you want to introduce your bourbon friends to a whiskey, Old Forester is a perfect distillery. I mean, Old Forester, I've heard some talks about this from the distillers there. It's like, if there's any musty note or any funk at all in anything they find, they get rid of it completely. It's like, nope, we can't have this. Which is great. You're never going to get off, you shouldn't ever get off bottles, off barrels. But it's just classic, fruity, delicious bourbon notes. Everything you would want in a bourbon in both of these expressions. As I mentioned, if you like something a little more bold, a little more, I mean, you like that barrel char, which I do. I love barrel char. And you also like fruity, sweet whiskey. I think the 1910 is a great option because it's still a little bit lower proof at 93. You know, still respectable proof. I mean, that's 93. But easier to sip for someone who's not used to barrel proof. 1920, we're moving up to barrel proof, classic bourbon profile, and you just can't go wrong with it. You cannot go wrong with it. Both of these bottles are right about the same price. So I got the 1910 for, I believe, $55. Old Forester was $60. $5 difference. I'll tell you right now, you pick up either one of these bottles, you're not going to be disappointed. You're not. You're just not. This, I will say about the 1910, because the first quarter of the bottle I had neck pour a little bit below, I was not impressed. I was like, oh, this is, 1920 is way better. Maybe it was just the proof to me, but the bottle opened up very nice. And now it's one of my favorite pours in my bar, honestly, along with the 1920. Doing these side by side, it's a great comparison, and it just shows you what a distillery Old Forester is, and the kind of stuff they're putting out is just great. 1920 all day at $60. 1910 pretty much all day, I'd say, at $55. If you can pick them up, grab both of these bottles yourself. Do a side-by-side. Let me know which expression is your favorite, because I want to hear. Thank you all so much for joining me for day 18 of our Bourbinsane Whiskey Advent Calendar. I love Old Forester products, and I had to do a side-by-side with these. Let me know down in the comments below if you have had both of these, which expression is your favorite. It's like picking which child's your favorite. You can't. It's so hard to do. You can't do it. I know. It's Thursday tomorrow. That means we're moving away from bourbon and onto rye. Now, every time I drink this rye that we're having tomorrow, I'm a little bit torn. Sometimes I'll have it, it'll be great. Next time I'll have it, I'll be like, I'm not sure. Find out tomorrow what I think of this rye, and let me know down in the comments below what rye you think we're trying. Keep in mind, we're going to higher proof stuff, a little higher value stuff. I appreciate y'all hanging out today. Thank you for watching this head-to-head. I appreciate every one of you being here. Stay insane, everyone.